Hello, my name is Roman Herzog. I'm German, now living here in Qatar in Doha since nearly 2 years. I work in sustainable finance. I work here for one of the largest regional banks, the largest bank in Qatar. And yeah, happy to have the interview with Walim to give you some more insights on sustainable finance.
Thank you so much. And why did you decide to study at the University of Aberdeen, and why particularly economics and finance degree?
I think it was first related to the degree itself. So I wanted to study economics and finance. For me, it was not super important which university. Given I came from Germany, and to be honest, I barely spoke English after my high school degree. So my idea was I have to learn English somehow. So I
Hmm.
applied for various universities, and having heard some good things about Scotland. I just opted to go to Scotland in the end, and Aberdeen accepted me, so I joined Aberdeen University, which after all was a very good choice, I have to say.
And why particularly finance and economics?
Yes, since I don't know, 15, 16, I was interested in, okay, how finance works, how does the stock exchange work,
Yeah.
what's the interconnection between economics, between the central banks, the banking, the economy. So how does this entire system work? So this
Hmm.
was for me then the natural choice to go for
Hmm.
economics and finance.
Yes. And what are some of your favorite memories from Aberdeen? Maybe from like social life of Aberdeen. Maybe you joined some societies or you just enjoyed hanging out with friends. Some moments you enjoyed.
I actually enjoyed the very international community. So I was then living the last 2 years with two Norwegian friends I'm still in contact with. And I joined the hiking society. So I actually really enjoyed, I don't know if they still do it, like hiking events where you jump onto a bus on Friday evening at 6. You drive to the mountains, to the highlands. You go hiking the weekend and you're back in on Sunday evening. Also played football. I think the new sports uh, hall there, the large one opened, I think the second year or so. So then they had indoor football tournaments. I played a lot of football. Yeah, and the pub community, like going out in the evening, it was always very good in Aberdeen. So the international community and yeah, the hiking was actually quite good. Really enjoyed that one.
That's nice. And you also did your postgraduate degree at Cranfield. Would you say it was beneficial for you and how?
Well, beneficial because if you go back, if I would have gone back to Germany, the master takes 2 years. In the UK, it only takes 1 year. And then also at the time when I started my degree in
Hmm.
2013, the University of Cranfield, is especially the course I did, master in finance and management, was ranked the second best in the UK and I think the eighth best in the world. So it was a very, very good university to go to. And then also being familiar with the education system in the UK, given I was studying in Scotland, also helps a bit because if you go to Germany or any other country, it's a different approach of teaching.
Yeah.
So it helps a lot to know a bit what to expect and having the good reputation and on another side also sticking to the UK to improve English was a natural choice.
Interesting. And if you had to summarize your career, would be some of the key milestones in your career?
The key milestones in my career. So that after my first job, I decided to do maybe that's something in my generation to do something with more impact and purpose. So after being a consultant for 2 years, I decided to join a startup as an intern for two
Mhm.
months, earning very little share of what I've earned before. So being 30 and then being an intern again. But yeah, doing something that I thought has more impact. This was one very big milestone. So follow my gut feeling rather my brain. And
Mhm.
yeah, then follow your heart is, I think, most important in your guts, not always your brain.
Mhm.
Uh, Given that the following steps I ended up, it was always like somehow a natural progression that you cannot plan.
Mhm.
It just happened related to having some connections from previous jobs, and then you just continue. So I think in general, one big milestone is to follow my gut feeling and be intern again in a startup, in a climate startup.
Mm-hmm.
And then second, just to continue the journey, like
Mm-hmm.
follow your heart a bit.
Very interesting. And what are some of the trends you see emerging in ECG space, in particular maybe in like the banking industry?
Well, ESG and sustainability in general had a very, very big hype, I would say, until the like after COVID,
Mm-hmm.
slightly before COVID, until the Ukraine war, where then the focus shifted a bit more. Also, with rising interest rates, it became more difficult for the companies to refinance, so they shifted a bit. But sustainability in general, it is all about managing risk and the risk about climate, the risk about biodiversity loss, and the risk is not going away. So I think what we see now in the space is that if it moves away from where everybody talks about, now it goes to the second layer where you actually implement and you work with
Mm-hmm.
the specific teams, especially the risk team, because the companies and especially banks have to understand the risks of their clients. If you're a producing company, you have to understand the risk within your supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
So to have this awareness, I think this will continue to grow, but it will not be as noisy as it was in the past.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And you work across Europe and now in the Middle East. How would you compare the ECG landscape in these regions, particularly in terms of maturity, regulation, and client needs? How's it different?
Well, in Europe, as in many topics, they're very much regulatory driven. And given that you also have a bit more educated society, especially in the Nordics, Sweden, Finland, Norway, even though it's an oil-based country, and Denmark. Um, so there's comes a lot from society, and this you don't have so much here in the society. Also, the regulators here, they're rather copy and pasting and slightly amending regulation that comes out of Europe or in other regions, and then implement it. They don't reinvent the wheel,
Yeah.
which makes the cycle a bit shorter. Um, but they do follow. It's just a bit of a time lag. And this is also what we, for example, now see here in Qatar that they made just 2 weeks ago, mandatory disclosure for all listed companies in Qatar to follow the international sustainability standard board, IFRS S1 and S2 sustainability reporting guidelines. So starting from 2026, and then they have to report the numbers in 2027. So you also see that this is now happening here, but not to such a large scale as it is in Europe.
Hmm. Interesting. And what would you say was the proudest moment in your career, or maybe the project you worked on?
I think it's very hard to say to have like the proudest project because in each company you have different responsibilities and you have different projects. It's a bit hard to compare, to be honest. Especially that I went from consulting to startup, which is very, very different working style. Um, than being in a bank, also very, very different to startup again. Hard to say, to be honest. I think for me, and this is what still stuck from talk with a consulting colleague. If you work, there are three areas. It's the content of your job that's very important. Equally important are your colleagues. So with whom do you work on these topics? Do you like your boss? If you don't like your boss, good luck. And the third one is how far away do you need to commute? I mean, this was especially important for consulting, but in general, work-life balance. But I recommend, especially when you start working, focus a bit more on work and less on balance. Uh, the balance comes a bit later. If you do good work for 10 years, then you can relax a bit more. Yeah, these three things in general are important for each job. And if you do a good job in all three of them and you enjoy your job, this is a very good milestone, I think. And if
Hmm.
these things are not working, then I can only highly recommend to change your job.
Yeah. And what's your advice for students who are looking to break into your type of career? Like, ESG in finance or banking? What should they focus on while they're still students?
What should they focus while they're on student loan? First of all, I think it's a bit challenging to follow up with the change, the very quick change of the regulatory landscape, especially depending on in which country you live. So just to be familiar with all the abbreviations and to understand what's behind the abbreviations. So when you have a conversation with somebody in the field that is not very obvious that you mix up things and you have no clue what you talk about, because nowadays you have so many sustainability experts, sustainability finance experts. But if you are more on the expert side and you talk to somebody who is rather faking it than making it, it's very quickly very obvious and you lose credibility. So make sure what you know, but maybe also make sure what you don't know and ask open questions, giving the field is changing very rapidly. And from a banking perspective, like in sustainable finance, if you work for a bank, it's all about risk. How do you manage the risk? How do you manage the risk of the clients, the sustainability risk of your clients?
Mm.
So be a bit familiar how this gets integrated in banks. And I can suggest now that you have more reporting coming out disclosure from companies. Yeah, I don't know, ask ChatGPT or any AI what are the best reports you can suggest for certain topics or for banks, and read the annual reports from the banks and try to understand and read corporate or annual reports, sustainability reports. Very often now they're integrated from companies, and this I think gives you a good feeling what they're trying to achieve, what they try to do. Yeah.
Interesting. That's a great advice. And are there any books or podcasts you'd recommend for our students? It might be career or non-career related. Maybe some books motivate you or inspire you, and you would recommend them.
I have to be honest, I didn't read the book the last 3 years. I have a daughter since 2 years. This is basically the book I read now. But before, which book was very interesting? I think the books I read before, they were less about academic or less about my subject. It was more about personal development.
Mm-hmm.
These are books. I have one book in mind. I just don't know the title anymore. I'll send it to you afterwards. Maybe you can
Yeah.
then somehow include it. But this was one very, very good book.
Mm-hmm.
You take yourself not too important, basically.
Yeah. And the last question is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Don't change anything you did the last 10 years.
Well, that's a great advice. Yeah, and
But there I would add as well that it's very, and this is maybe a personal thing, be very, very open to change. The work nowadays is very flexible. So it's very important to follow your gut feeling sometimes more than your brain, and you cannot plan everything. And I think this is very important also in working life. If you would have asked me 2 years ago if I live and work in Qatar, I would have said no,
Mhm.
never ever. But you cannot plan things, so it's very important just to be open, and if opportunities come up, sometimes grab them without questioning too much. I've had this. I went to Qatar having a baby, which was half a year old. My wife is Lebanese, so it makes it a bit easier. But nonetheless, we've never been to Qatar. I had 3 interviews, and I said yes, and I came. So yeah, be open, and then don't regret afterwards. This is why I don't regret the last 10 years.